it's very difficult to justify taxing people on low incomes to pay for the child benefit of those earning so much more than them. These days we've really got to focus the resources on where they are most needed. We've got to be tough but fair.
Well, there are several things wrong with Gideon Osborne's pronunciamento on the changes, he called them, cuts, most people would call them, to child benefit. First of all, the Tories said they were not going to do that before the election. People voted for them, therefore, on a false prospectus. Two, it is so riddled with anomalies that a one-parent family, or even a family with just one person working, with the mother staying at home, say, earning £1 above the upper tax bracket, will lose their child benefit, whilst a family with two earners can both be earning £1 less than the upper tax bracket, therefore earning £88,000 a year as a household, and they will continue to get the child benefit. This is madness. Surely a blind man could see that that just is unfair. And thirdly, as Ian Duncan Smith said in his speech on Sunday, the whole thing's going to be swept away in 4 years if the government lasts that long. In any case, there will be an end to universal benefits in 4 years as part of Ian Duncan Smith's sweeping reform of the social security and benefits system. So why, and here I draw on the august organ of the Daily Telegraph, why kick in the teeth middle-class people who've chosen perhaps for the mother to stay at home, so there's only one wage coming in, the mother staying at home with the children, they're being kicked in the teeth in a way that was explicitly ruled out by the Tories before the election. Now I'm going to surprise you here. I'm actually not in favour of universal benefits. I think it's ridiculous that I get paid child benefit. I don't need it. I think it's ridiculous that rich people in big mansions get a winter heating allowance. That should be divvied up amongst people that really need it. So I'm not defending universality as a principle, as most of the left do, but this change is just bonkers. Well, we were half an hour short of the show, so let's fire into the calls which are flooding in. Here's Jono in Northampton, who disagrees with me. That's why he's up next. Go on, Jono.
George, I am absolutely amazed by what I'm hearing from you this evening. People should be paid to have bigger families.
Yeah, so they can...
People should be given benefits for having bigger families. People should be given houses for having bigger families. George, I'm a working man.
Who's going to pay your pension, Jono? Jono, who's going to pay your pension?
I'm going to pay my pension,
No,
George.
I can assure you, well, you must be paying one hell of a contribution if you are.
Sorry, George, are we talking about pensions or are we talking about paying people to have children?
Well, maybe you're too thick to grasp this equation. If you are, let me say it slowly. If the population gets older and older, and the birth rate keeps falling and falling, then either you or your children will have nobody working to generate the wealth to pay their pension.
George, I will happily listen to you. Are we talking about having children or are we talking about pensions?
Both. You can't have pensions unless you've got enough people working. Can't you see that, Jono?
No, yeah, of course I can see that, George, and I am the father of two. And the reason I've got two children is because I have worked my arse off since the day that I left school, and I can afford to have two children. Now, we have been reading in the papers over the last 10 years about people who have been living on benefits and being given houses and being...
Where have you been reading that, Jono? Where have you been reading that?
George, you only have to...
Where have you been reading it? What newspapers do you read, Jono?
I read The Guardian, George.
Really? You didn't read that in The Guardian?
Of course I did, George.
Because it's right-wing propaganda, and you've fallen for it as a working man, hook, line and sinker. Now, there's you and your missus, and your two children, God bless you all. But that means a net increase in the population of zero.
Sorry, George.
I'm sure you can work
George,
that out.
Excuse me for interrupting you. But when somebody makes a move to try and do something about the situation, about people living on benefits and having children which they can't afford to, people like you saying that people... should we pay people to have children? Only wealthy people can have children. That's just propaganda, George.
No, but John,
you should be sensible about the amount of children you have.
Let me say something.
You should be sensible. It's not people being kicked in the teeth.
John, can I get a word in?
We've been No, I'm sorry, George.
No, you're sorry. I can't get a word in.
Will you please let me finish?
Okay, go on.
You sit there proselytising or whatever the word is.
That's the word. That's what I'm doing. I'm proselytising. Why not? I have beliefs. I stand up for them.
Well,
I get
George,
3 hours a week to do it.
I have beliefs too. And it's the normal people, George, who read every day in the papers.
You don't read it every day. You don't read it in the Guardian.
George, I'm sorry,
you did not read that in the Guardian.
We read it in every... I'm sorry. How do you know that I didn't read that?
Because I read the Guardian and they don't publish that kind of garbage.
Of course
now,
they
can
do,
I get
George,
my word in now?
No, because it's not garbage, George. You're just doing the usual thing. You are.
I'm glad you're listening. Well, I'm glad you're listening.
People who are trying to do something about a situation.
Nonetheless, I'm glad.
Should we pay for people to have bigger families, George, if they can't afford to have bigger families?
I'm trying to ask you a question. I'm trying to ask you a question, if you'll just let me.
Well, here's the question then. Should we pay for people to have bigger families who can't afford to have bigger families? Somebody who is living on benefits, unfortunately for them, they're living on benefits. They can't get a job for whatever reason.
No, I'm going to fade you down now because you've actually been on for a very long time. Believe me, and I want to ask you a question. You have 2 children, and you're a working man. If you lose your job, and I very much hope that you don't, if you lose your job next week, I'm going to be paying for your 2 children. And that's right,
George,
isn't it?
No, you are not, George, because I have put money away and aside every week.
You've put enough money away as a working man. You've put enough money away every week to keep your children for what might be years of unemployment. You're having a laugh.
George, if I lose my job next week, I have got enough money to see me and my family through.
How much?
For the next... George, I don't know how long for, but...
Well, that's the point, you see. That's the point, you see. You don't know how long it would be for. And eventually, unless you're actually extremely rich and not quite the Guardian reading working man that you're claiming to be, you're going to run out of money. And then I will have to pay for your children. And so I should. Because we're all our brother's keepers. We're all God's children. We cannot pass by on the other side of the road. And we certainly can't follow public policy that will cast our children onto the streets and alleyways like they did in Victorian times, prey to all the wickedness that lies out there.